experience the world. All right? And so who you are has to do with issues of race, of gender, of socioeconomic status. Now there's a show, there's been a couple of shows, but there's been some show on MTV, yeah, Trading Places. Where trading? No, not Trading Spaces. Where they take a couple of white folk and a couple of African American folk, and they do makeup and everything, and they make them.
That's Tyra.
What one was it? No.
They made a show. No, I thought there was a show like that.
What was that? Black, white.
I think it was.
Where was it? Yeah. Anyway, they took the people and they did a makeover on them, so that they would be the other race, and then they would go into different settings. They would go to the store, and shop, or they would go to a restaurant and eat or something. And the whole point of this was to demonstrate that they were going to be perceived differently, and they were going to perceive the world differently because of this experience that they were going through. That when they changed their race, that they would begin to encounter the world in a different way. And we'll talk about the difficulty of that kind of empathy. We talked about the idea of empathy. So some people see the world more as it really is than others. Now, let's talk about this for a minute. Some people see the world more as it really is than others. I'm interested in hearing some responses to that. Even Griffin has some things to say about that.
I feel like more of the more people in this world suffer than don't, maybe. I don't know, in the sense of being poor and having to do labor for work in other countries, and the United States itself is more of a wealthier country.
Okay, right. Yeah, so all of us here are, even if we're here in a difficult place, we're in a pretty privileged place to be perceiving the world. But do we see the world more as it really is than the Brazilian mine worker or the Indian child laborer? What do you think?
Well, what you're saying, I have a problem with as it really is, because the world is I guess you can't say that's how the world is, separated into regions maybe. So
yeah.
The reality.
Or what does that mean? Reality, because see, part of standpoint theory's argument is that women, right? That's what the standpoint theory is about. Is about that women see the world more as it really is than men do. That's part of the argument of standpoint theory, and there are reasons. John?
Well, I think there's a lot of cruelty in the world that a lot of people that make a lot of money rise above, whether it be where they live or where they move to out of a cruel situation. But as you showed in those pictures before,
right.
This particular screen, there are a lot of people living in areas and they don't have the money to remove themselves, and they're seeing the cruel reality of things we will never see and never saw as a child.
Okay.
We hear about them, yeah, but if you had your choice, I think most people, if they were given, would you like to go to India and make bricks all day in 1,000-degree heat, or would you rather go and sit in your air-conditioned, living room and watch the Yankees? Most people are going to pick the latter.
Right, but part of the challenge of standpoint theory is to ask the question, who is seeing the world better?
Well, I was going to say, I agree with what she's saying. But I also think it has to do with, what your situation is. If you're, laying bricks as a child, or even an adult or a person, or a teen or whatever, you're not really going to care so much about other people's problems in other countries. And you might not have the access to the news and, information that we do, and we don't go through all that. We hear about it. We hear, wow, there's child labor, here, so we know what's going on out there, and we see that the world can be harsh. They're living it, and they don't necessarily see how it is everywhere else in the world.
Right, so I think standpoint theory would say that if we don't encounter their voices in communication, then there's at least a perspective on the world that we can't imagine ourselves into it. We can't imaginatively place ourselves and say, okay, I'm going to imagine what it would be like to be a child laborer in India for a while. You just can't do it because they are in it. And you've got to hear their voices rather than imagine their voices. So let's go.
Well, even our ability to sit here in class right now and talk about it, that this exists out there. Like,
Right.
And for the kids in India, that's their world. That's all they know.
Right.
You know, so there's no other access.
Right. So
They don't know any better.
Right.
They don't know anything else is out there.
So again, do they see the world more accurately than we do? Again, let's just.
I don't think there's no truly real way to see what the world really is, because everyone, you and I may think we're seeing the world the way it really is, but you may be thinking the world is different than the way I may be thinking the world is different. So I don't think there's truly a way for someone to say, well, we see the world what it really is, because everyone's perception is different.
Okay. Well, this is a struggle, right? This is a struggle because the theory is out there. The theory is in the book. Theory is to write articles about it, and it was written to argue that women see the world more accurately than men do, and I think it needs to be broadened out significantly from that.
Yeah, going off that too, like, being that the world constitutes all this, you know, including a certain group of privileged people and maybe a large group of underprivileged people, and you know, you have privilege all dispersed all over the world versus underprivileged. It's like, unless you have, I would say the privileged have the opportunity better to see everything that the world encompasses, versus they don't, like he was saying before, that they don't have the news and they don't have things like that, so all they have is their own problems. They don't,
Right.
They may not even know what privileged life is like,
Right.
to maybe the degree that we can see what the underprivileged life is like.
Yeah.
You know, so maybe in a way the privileged people can see more,
Yeah.
travel more, and understand more of what exists in the world.
Right, and
whereas they're confined to where they're at.
Not under pressure. Yeah, so you have a larger perspective, which, so there are a lot of things. We're going to come back to this. Prudence, you want to say something?
Yeah, I think that it's one of the gender differences that it seems to me that women are biologically programmed to be other-oriented, to have their attention and to be innate caretakers and, you know, the sort of guardians of life. And I think that it's a generalization, but I think it predisposes women to be able to empathize, to see into somebody else's condition, and maybe,
Okay.
according to this theory, to have maybe a more realistic view.
Yeah, I'm not sure that they would make that argument in this chapter, that you're programmed that way necessarily.
Biologically.
Yeah, I mean,
Men are not naturally caretakers.
Or empathizers.
It's not natural.
whoa.
It's not bad or wrong. It's just
I thought I read in the book this.
Talking about that.
I thought I read in the book that, where's my chalk? That it may be true that, let's put on the scale of empathy, right? Low empathy, high empathy. Women are here and men are here, but that's an average stereotype, and that the variability is wide. Did anyone else read this? It may be true in general, but you will find men who may be more empathetic than a number of women.
That's true. But it's not the norm.
Well, but norm is interesting, you know. Norm is, when you take statistics, we'll talk about distributions of people, the outliers, the standard deviation, the variability, that, all right. Let's move on.
I say my husband makes a better woman than I do, because he is more, it's true. He is more empathetic.
I hope you don't say that to him on a regular basis.
Like you said, it's not, maybe not the norm in all places,
I-
and you're right there. But I think
variability.
wise proves right.
Okay. Well, I'm going to hold this off for a little bit. So gender and perspective, women are seeing a different world than men see. Now, I know that women friends of mine, people I've gotten into conversations with about this say, that's very true. You as a man don't understand what it's like to walk down a street and have people look at you a certain way. You just don't, what's that?
What do you mean? Look to the cow.
Look as right, there's a lot more pressure on women.
Like, if you're looking at a cow,
They say,
like,
you don't understand what that's like. To go everywhere you go, to be subjected to harassment, sexual harassment is a possibility.
It's kind of true though, because like a lot of people too, not only just guys, but like females too do it. Like I was watching the news, and like it was like some Hooters waitress, and she was on an airplane like Southwest or something, and she was like wearing like, I don't know, a short skirt and like a shirt or something, and like whatever, that's that's how she wants to dress. And like some other female passenger like got upset by it and complained, and like that girl had to sit and watch like a video before she can even fly to her destination because of how she was dressed. And I think that's ridiculous.
Yeah, okay.
What was the video?
Different.
Like just like, appropriate dress for, this occasion, appropriate dress for that occasion, and like she had to pull her skirt down. I don't know.
Did you see that?
I'd like
No.
educational video.
She got kicked off the flight?
Her skirt was too short. It was like this big, but
They have an airline. They have their own airlines, don't they?
Southwestern Airlines.
Yeah.
Hooters don't know.
Hooters Airlines is gone.
It's gone. All
I
right.
remember seeing those.
It's for bachelor parties only.
Anyway.
For bachelor parties.
Well, the argument from standpoint theory is that because of the way culture works, because of their disadvantaged and marginalized standing in society, that men are over-advantaged, women are under-advantaged. And so they see the world from a different perspective, and they see it more clearly because they have to be more alert, more tuned in.
Griffin's thoughts?
Now, this is the theory itself.
The theory
Yeah,
itself.
yeah.
Who came up with this theory?
Well, this is Wood and, who's the other? Harding, yeah, Wood and Harding. Yeah.
This is right on.
Just the term more clearly. I understand women see a different world, yes. But women see more clearly. What's clearly? What is the right way? No
Well,
one really knows.
that's the issue.
Say one way or another. Who
See,
sees clearly?
Right.
Who
See,
sees it right?
this becomes the issue from a postmodern perspective, that by and large, this theory is what's called a postmodern theory. That it tries to say that the traditional hierarchies are wrong, they need to be broken down. The traditional rankings are wrong of gender and race and things like that. But most postmodernisms then end up in a place of relativism, where they say there's only local realities. There is no the way it is. There's only the way it is here, and the way it is here, and the way it is here. But this theory wants to make this claim. So that's a challenging point about this theory. And
But is this theory speaking in absolute terms? Does that apply
Yes.
to all of humanity?
that's the way they want to portray their theory, in absolute terms. So it asks questions like this, really. It answers questions like this. Perspective involves the way you perceive the world, the way you perceive people, and the way you answer questions about the world. So what are people like? Are people trustworthy? Are people reliable? Or are they not? What is human nature like? So if you're a man, you might answer that question differently than a woman would, because of your experience of the world and coming from a place of outside. Is the world a friendly or a hostile place? So in the book's example of the slave owner and the slave, the slave owners might say, "Oh, the world is a fine place," and the slave would say, "The world is a horrible, hostile place." So your perspective on the world differs. What actions are allowable? Is violence acceptable? So depending on your place in the advantaged or disadvantaged spectrum, you will answer that question differently in terms of marginalization and oppression, right? I mean, I don't know if you're following all of the conversations that are going on about the violence in the Middle East and suicide bombers and where they come from and where do you go to recruit suicide bombers from. And you go to severely disadvantaged people. You go to people who are underadvantaged, who are marginalized and oppressed, and they look at the world, they see a whole different world than you see, and from their perspective, violence is a valid response to the world. So it becomes a question of perspective and standpoint, you know, where you are. So is violence acceptable? Is work good or bad? Should I work hard or should I just get by? Depends on your standing. What's important? How should we communicate? All right, so these are some of the things that standpoint theory makes you think about. So let's go over some of Griffin's notes. I'm just going to walk through Griffin's notes with you on standpoint theory. So he says a standpoint is a place from which we view the world that determines what we focus on and what's obscured. So privileged people won't see some things, and underprivileged people will see things that privileged people just miss. Okay. Susan Harding and Julia Wood claim that social groups to which we belong shape what we know and how we communicate. Social inequalities generate distinctive accounts of nature and social relationships. So where you stand determines what you see, what world you feel like you live in.
And he's agreeing with that?
Now, well, Griffin will challenge this. Griffin himself is more of a realist philosophically, if that there is a world that exists. But then we debate about social worlds that exist. But Griffin is more of a realist.
You know what I was going to say is a lot of people see women a lot of times as being negative when they are more realist than negative.
Okay, and so what that a standpoint theorist would say, it's only negative because you privileged don't want to admit the reality of what they're seeing, right? So but that's where standpoint theory helps us as communicatively trained people to enter communication in different ways. Because we realize, okay, you are seeing the world differently. I need to listen to you, and we need to negotiate what we agree together the world is. Right. So there's this question of ideal knowers. That what people are in the best position to really understand the world, to be objective about things, to really say it the way it is, to use an old phrase, tell it like it is. Well, who knows that? Well, who are the ideal knowers? And they want to argue that women as a marginalized group are more in an ideal place to know, because they will have less partial views of the world. Now, they do point out that women are not a monolithic group. All women don't experience the world the same way, right? Yes, no?
Yes.
Right.
It depends on the situation, yeah.
Okay, so even in American society, depending on the money situation for you, your education, your opportunities, women experience the world in significantly different ways. You know, there's, I think I mentioned this to you before, that the recent reports are that girls 10 to 19, girls in the ages of 10 to 19, the suicide rate has risen 41%. That bothers me, you know. It's bothered, you know, it's just a annoying thing for me. I work with a lot of community groups, I work with a lot of kids organizations, and I just think about that. Why girls, and why 10 to 19? What is going on with girls 10 to 19? You know, and why is suicide going up? Well, I'm not in a place to understand that world, but I can listen to people who are in that world, and they can explain to me what's going on. So they are certainly ideal knowers of that. But their argument is that most research that has been done into communication has started from men's lives rather than women's lives. It has started with men's questions. It has been conducted on the basis of the way men thought it should be conducted. And they want to see research done starting from women's lived experience, and where women are asking the questions and women are talking about the methods for finding out the information. So I'll give you an example of this, which doesn't work genderly, but I serve on this national committee for dialogue. And in our committee, we had a significant argument or fight at one point about how to do our research, our survey research. We had one male in the group who is a professor of forensic pathology at a major university in the United States. And his argument was we have to do quantitative statistical analysis about this issue. We have to design a survey that will give us numbers that we can do correlation, statistical regression analysis, and all of this about. And then we had other people in the committee who argued, no, we need to do our research by asking people questions and getting their words, letting them, which is called qualitative research. We need to encounter the people and hear what they have to say. And so it was a big fight on the committee about whether we should do qualitative research or quantitative research. And in the end of the day, we designed a survey instrument that had both quantitative and qualitative components to it. We put it up on the web, and we've got like 4,000 responses to it. So I've got hundreds of pages of both numerical data and verbatim data to this. So their argument is that starting from women's lives, research would probably be conducted differently. That if women are more interested in connection, they would be more inclined towards qualitative research than quantitative statistical
I was
research.
going to bring up another example. Something that I brought up in another class that a lot of us have together about, I don't know if you saw it on Channel 13, the World War II retrospective. It's running for like 15 hours each night.
Yeah.
But they had a nice article in the paper, because usually when you say World War II, you associate it with men. However, there were a lot of women involved in World War II.
Right.
And this documentary is the first one to put a highlight on women's role in World War II.
Okay.
And I just thought that was, in other words, their perspective on a lot of different areas that they worked in.
Yeah, to see the world from that perspective.
Were kind of ignored for years.
Right. So, and they will see things that the men don't see. They will explain the world in ways that the men don't explain the world. This is, who just did the movies about Iwo Jima, Flags of Our Fathers, and there were two movies though, right?
Right.
There was one from the American perspective, Letters, and one from the Japanese perspective. Right. So that would fit into this whole thing of standpoint theory, that you'll see the world significantly differently from where you are standing there. Part of their argument is that people who are at the top of the social hierarchy get to define people lower down the hierarchy. So basically they're arguing that men, as being higher on the, have basically said to women, you have to approach the world by the way we see the world. You have to deal with the world on the way we describe it and define it. And they want to say, no, men need to listen to women's descriptions of the world and begin to use that to see the world in new ways. So that becomes a communication issue. All right, let me do one more slide, then I'll give you a break, and then we'll come back and follow up with this. So these are my questions now for you. Why does this theory privilege gender?
What does that mean exactly? Like as far as privilege?
Why does this theory say that the core thing that makes people see the world differently is gender? What do you want to think about that?
I think because it's easy to point to that, because there's like women and there's men, and you could easily say, all right, I agree with that. As opposed to like a different culture where you can't really discuss. Right,
There's like 100,000 cultures, but there's, in terms of, again, we got the terms are messed up here. We talk about biological sex, and gender is a social construction, right? That's the language we use. So biologically there are men and women mostly, and then so it's two, so it's easy to work with. And other thoughts on this?
Well, I was just gonna say, if you break it down, you have like human, and then the next thing from there would be male, female, and after that would be ethnicity. Let's say so. Obviously, someone of a different ethnicity, male or female, is going to view the world different than someone else of a different ethnicity, male or female.
Okay.
So the best way would be to just look at it as male or female, and you can see in most societies, it does tend to be, I guess, male dominated in terms of rules and stuff like that, or the way that societal norms were started and everything.
Right. So within feminism, the patriarchal thing spans cultures from their perspective. Did you have a comment?
Never mind.
Okay. Okay. All right.
It's universal, I think. I mean, the gender issue transcends all cultures. I mean, it's present everywhere, in all countries and all ethnicities.
Yeah, maybe. I'd be careful, though. Be very careful about claiming universals. This is part of what we do in theory. There's what we call nomothetic theory, which is trying to get universal rules about things in communication. And then there's a practical theory, which says, in these settings, this appears to be the way things go. So we do have to be a little careful about universal claims. Just a caution. Go ahead.
This theory, aren't they claiming?
This theory is a universalizing claim, yes.
Because of the nature of the gender differences.
Right. And right.
So it was nomothetic, and what's the other one?
Practical. Yeah, that's the other one. That's Stephen Littlejohn's breakdown of it. So the question becomes, what other perspectives might there be? So you go from human to male and female, then you go into ethnicities of male and female. So ethnicity may be another standpoint that we can stand in.
Socioeconomic.
Yeah, socioeconomic status becomes one. And so we'll come back and we'll pick up this question. How does this theory affect our practice of professional communication, public relations, and organizational communication? Did you have a question? And then I want to show you, though, a little bit more of the perspective of from human trafficking questions.
What was the second one?
Because I think that organizational. What?
Yeah, what are other perspectives might there be?
Well, if you go from, then you have ethnicities, and then you have, I'm not sure what else we said. Socioeconomic status. But I want to spend a little time. I think if Griffin had updated his book a little bit more, that what's considered to be the equivalent of modern day from the slavery perspective is the human trafficking issue. So I think it'd be interesting for us to play with that a little bit in thinking about where that might fit into standpoint theory. So let's break for how about 10 minutes, It's 3:31, we'll come back 3:41, 3:40, and keep going.
I'm trying to get a feel for when our various assignments are due.
Yes,
And I don't see anything on here other than these dates.
right. Let me turn this thing off and then I'll come answer your question.
Yeah, what's going on?